Welcome to Beyond the Chutes, the rodeo podcast that dives deep into the heart of Western culture. I'm your host, Doug Simcox, and here we explore it all. Rodeo's rich histories, the legends and their stories, today's competitors shaping the sport, and the behind-the-scenes heroes who make it happen. From bucking chutes to timed events, from rodeo history to current events, this is your all-access pass to the world of rodeo. Our show is presented by Parasite Systems, who help vet clinics and animal owners experience the power of sight. New in 2025, the all-in-one analyzer featuring fecal site AI, hemosite AI, and flow site AI technology. You can find them at parasitesystems.com. Welcome to Beyond the Chutes is presented by Parasite Systems. I'm your host today, Doug Simcox, and I'm recording in Taylorsville, Kentucky. It is February 1st. The sun is shining. The snow has finally melted, and it has gotten warmer. Yesterday we got into the low 60s, so I think we are going to leave this cold behind us for a bit. Today we have got a super great guest that is joining us. I'm so excited. I met her earlier this year. I think it was in May. I met her in Hurricane Mills, Tennessee, and excited to have her on. This is Windy Ratchford Lattin.
Hi, Doug. I'm so honored to be here. I really don't feel like I'm worthy of being on this podcast.
Oh my goodness. I'm so excited to have you on the show. You and I have had some great phone conversations over this last couple months, and today's the day we get to learn a lot about Windy. So I show Wynnewood, Oklahoma is your mailing address. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Your father's Wendell Ratchford.
Yes, sir.
Wild Horse Rodeo Company was his company, and I know you worked with them. You secretaried for that rodeo company. And we had Wendell on here last week, and what a show. My goodness, the miles he covered and everything. And I'm going to start with you exactly the way I started with him, which is tell me about growing up Windy Ratchford. Earliest memories. Take us back.
Some of my earliest memories are a toddler, probably 2. I actually remember my very hint of a memory of my first birthday party, because now my mom has a picture of it and Leah Wiseman being there. Prior to her being Leah, she was Leah Steffelbein at the time. And I remember us being on the road a lot with mom and dad in a camper. And I always have my friends when we get to the rodeos. I mean, rodeo was my main memory. I remember the Bellis girls, Debbie and Lori Bellis, being my babysitters. And Lori was always carrying me, them holding my hand. I just remember that so much. And the other kids on the road, us being on our little tricycles, going around the Coliseums. And then, I remember watching the Longhorn Rodeos were always so theatrical, the lighting and the music and all of that. And so I felt like I was growing up in Hollywood. I felt like I was amongst stars all the time. And so when I got to an age where I had to go to school, I just didn't understand these kids not knowing who these rodeo people were that I thought were superstars. Like, I thought they should know that my daddy was a world champion bull rider. They should know that. Why aren't, and they should know that I know trick riders. And, it was such a different world. And I feel so lucky and blessed to have grown up that way. And I was so proud that we were able to raise our boy that way.
Oh, that is so neat. One of the questions I usually ask growing up, and then, of course, how did you find rodeo? And quite frankly, you were never not in rodeo.
No, never. I don't know how young I was on the first one, but I'm sure it was under a month old going to the first one.
Oh, wow.
Because I was born in May, so it was right in the middle of rodeo season. I'm sure I was barely out of barely out in the open before I was at my first rodeo.
You had some great babysitters, Debbie and Lori
Oh, I
Bellas.
had wonderful babysitters. Marlon Harris was one of my babysitters. My mom and dad had mostly cowboys in the truck with them, and they, had a crew with all the time. Big Rick was one of my babysitters, the photographer, and then, oh goodness, Marlon, Tommy Crandall. I mean, we always had people with us all the time. Termite, you know, that were always like my big brother, my uncles, I guess you could say.
Okay. And so I love your description, of course, of Longhorn Rodeo and tying it to this is Hollywood, right? You were among stars and you just named a bunch of big stars there. So
Yeah.
starstruck, just what you always knew?
Yes, I just felt like that was that was my world that we were in, and I didn't understand normal people that didn't go every weekend somewhere or travel the world or go all over the United States. I didn't understand that. I felt I felt like I was put in a prison when I did have to start school, and and I kind of seen that in my son whenever he had to start school. It was not what he wanted. He wanted to stay on the road
Yeah.
with all of our friends. But as a young girl, and now I see it in young little girls nowadays, the trick riding was the only thing I could ever remember wanting to do. And
Really?
my grandma told everybody when I was young that she's talked about being a trick rider since she was 2 years old. And that was the only thing I ever had in my head that I had goals to do when I grew up. A lot of people say, well, they're dreams. Well, that was my only dream.
Really? So let me
Yeah.
ask you. So I'm going to ask you, why do you think that caught your attention? I mean, there were so many different things. You had cowgirls that were running barrels. Um,
My mom was a great barrel racer, and I did run barrels. I
okay,
always had a horse. I
okay,
always had a barrel horse. I remember starting to run barrels when I was little bitty, and Dad always wanted me to be a barrel racer. And so, but that was just, every time I could get a chance, I would try to trick ride.
okay.
I just that was the only thing I ever was really driven to try to get accomplished.
And I know it was tough for you to go back to school. I mean, you're living the life out there all summer long, right? You're in rodeo you're in
hmm
rodeo full time, always. Sports in school, gymnastics, anything?
No,
No?
we tried. Mom and I, once Dad and her split up, Mom
Mm-hmm.
and I, we moved around quite a bit. So I changed schools quite often, but I did play basketball in school and run track a little bit, not much. I mean, I was rodeo whenever she had always kept me a barrel horse, and I always went to high school rodeos, junior rodeos.
Oh, okay.
So we always had a horse, and she always had barrel horses. So, I mean, for us to go on the weekends together, we'd either go to a rodeo, horse show, barrel racing, something. So that kept me occupied. I, it was weird. I always had this mindset, and I did change schools quite often, and frankly, can't remember very many people I went to school with because I always felt like they were that was just a separate community. That
Okay.
wasn't my community,
Okay.
and we weren't going to go to the same place. And that sounds probably harsh, but
Yeah.
I never got it never bothered me to not be popular if I was at a school I wasn't popular at because they weren't my people anyway.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That that's just the way I felt. And
Yeah.
my rodeo people were my people.
Yeah. So transitioning to trick riding, and this I'm going to tie this back to what you just said. Trick riding isn't what most normal, I'm going to put that in quotes, normal kids do. What did your friends think, your schoolmates think, when they learned you were trick riding and rodeoing?
They didn't even understand what it was. Um, so, but I'm 52 you're now, and so back then social media wasn't out there. They didn't know what it was. They didn't see Cowboy Channel with trick riders on it. They didn't see Facebook post every 5 minutes with a bunch of different trick riding, so they didn't have a clue what I was even talking about.
Okay.
It wasn't like you could take your phone to school and show them a picture either.
Sure.
It was just not even understood, and I really didn't feel like I had to tell them this is what I was doing.
No,
I mean, I was doing good enough. Well, my dad really wasn't too excited about it. He really didn't want me doing it. So I really didn't even tell him much of trick riding. No,
really?
He didn't. Not really. No, he wanted me to run barrels, and he I didn't say he discouraged it, but he didn't encourage it. And so I kind of hid it. I mean, he did. I do say that whenever I would do some stupid things like practice in a barrel saddle on a horse that didn't need to be, you didn't need to be hanging off the side of, he did find connections close around here to show me how to get it done right. So he'd sent me to a friend of ours, Patty Wallenberg, for a weekend because she had an actual trick riding saddle and a horse that actually had been trick rode on. And I don't know that Patty trick rode a whole lot. Her name's Patty Visa now. I don't know that she trick rode a whole lot, but she always had a really good Liberty Horse Act, and she had
Mm-hmm.
openings that she took to all the rodeos. That she had a group of girls that did drill team, but she knew how to do little tricks because we did them. But a lot of it she looked up in a book on how to put the straps on it. It's a wonder I didn't get killed. But,
so let me. So you covered a lot of ground there. I want to back up. So you were trick riding quietly without hoping your dad didn't find out you were trick riding.
Right. So I would be by myself at the house
Right.
at the ranch and go saddle a pickup horse and take him to the bullpen. We always had a arena set up where we buck bulls and horses at, and I'd go practice.
Okay.
And not knowing, trying to figure it out really. But I mean, and that was like 12, 13 years old.
I was going to say, so you were 12, 13, or I was going to ask. So
yeah,
12,
before
13.
I ever started doing any of that. I mean, I had wanted to do it from the time I was little bitty, as long as I could remember. And I think because he took a break from going to those rodeos, that was the only place I ever got to see it, the Longhorns. So I think that break there, I didn't really, probably from 5 to 12, I didn't get to see it that much.
Okay.
So,
but you stayed motivated to want to do it.
I wanted to do it.
So
when he went back to judging at those rodeos and I got to go see it again, I remembered, like, oh, that's exactly what I wanted to do. I remembered, that's all I've ever wanted to do, and I can't believe they're still doing this because, like I said, if you're not going to the rodeos that have trick riding, there weren't that many trick riders back then.
Right. So let me ask you this great big question. And golly, when you're doing such a great job of describing this, so you're 2 years old, you kind of know what you want to do. Your grandma definitely knew that you wanted to do it. You kind of hang out and get busy when you're 12, 13 years old. But what appealed to you? Earliest memories, what appealed to you about trick riding?
I think it was just seeing, well, for me being little, I was in the stands listening the energy of those crowds when Lancy McEnany did the most beautiful hippodrome stand in a spotlight with the house partially dark. It's just, it'd bring chills to you. It was just like, wow, that's the most beautiful thing. And it brought that Hollywood star feeling, I guess. So that just wanting to do that was just, and I had the no fear riding kind of kid anyway. I was always the kind that would go out there and find my pony and swing up on him and take off and go do whatever I wanted to do. Speed didn't scare me. That bucking didn't scare me. That kind of thing. That wasn't something that bothered me. That beauty of seeing her on that horse, and she's tall and slender, and that horse was black, and he was beautiful, and under a spotlight, and oh wow, And then and all of the trick riders, they were all so beautiful. And I don't know, it was just, I'm sure it was no different than a kid nowadays looking at a star on TV and thinking, or a singer, you know, and thinking, I want to be a singer. I don't know.
Okay. Oh no, that makes sense. I was gonna ask, was it wanting to perform? And you said theater and Hollywood star and all that. And
No, because
no,
I'm not that,
okay,
no,
no, no,
no, I'm not into the theater thing. Now
okay,
I appreciate a performer
yeah,
because there's a big difference in a trick rider that can do a hard trick and a performer that can sell a hard trick.
mm-hmm.
There's a
Okay,
big difference.
okay,
A
okay,
lot of difference you can see today. I feel like that the performers back then were more of salesmen. You know, showmanship back then was just like, you know, we can get into Lenore Rowe, but she could sell a horse take it just going out there doing nothing. I mean, her horses were amazingly trained performers, but it didn't matter. When she went into that arena, she owned it, and she could bring the house in and have everybody captured
mm-hmm.
by her hands and her smile. And I wanted that. I guess that was one of the things I wanted, because I was just like, that is just the most powerful thing I'd ever seen. I don't know if I've ever captured that quality, or, you know, I try. That's my biggest critique of myself, is when I see my videos, I'm like, oh, I didn't sell it. I didn't sell it. I didn't smile here. I didn't smile there. You know, that's my critique. But as a little girl, I watched that. I could hear the crowd, the energy of that building. Jerry Bellis selling it, and it was powerful. And then I'm growing up with Nancy as one of the moms on the road. Like her, Laura and I are close to the same age, and we're playing together at 2 and 3 years old. And Nancy's there all the time around me, and I'm just thinking, wow, you're the luckiest girl in the world. You got a superstar mom. But I mean, nothing against my own mother, who was a great barrel racer. I just didn't watch the barrel racing that much. I was more into the trick riding and the performing. And my mom was an amazing horsewoman, and she still is. But in credit to her for teaching me how to ride a horse. Like
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
I ride because was a great teacher to teaching me how to ride. And you know, so that was just one of those things, that was my I was just drawn to it, I guess.
Okay.
And as I got older and I kind of played with it, then the thrill seeking kind of got to me. It's like, wow, that was exhilarating to hang off of a running horse. It's
Okay.
pretty, and have control of it. Like, you can get back up when you want, but you have to have faith in that horse and faith in yourself that you're going to be able to pull off what you practiced.
You bet.
And so that is a whole nother, probably like a bull rider or bronc rider, that, you know, mentality, I guess.
And in those moments, and you talk about thrill seeking, or feeling that way, in those moments, are you in the zone?
Yeah, I think there's times when, yeah, I felt like that. I felt like I'm in total control of, me and this horse are such a team that nothing can happen. Yeah, like,
Okay. Okay. And you talk about practicing and this and so forth. And I want to come back to your early influences. You know, you've already talked about Lenore, of course, and Nancy McEnany. I know there's so many more we want to get into,
hmm
but gosh, there's so many different places to go. Let me ask this: What do you remember the first trick you ever learned?
yeah, let's get back to Patty Visa. So I spent that weekend with her. Now, we had a friend here that was staying down the road from us before I went to Patty's house. Her name was Sandy Fulmer, and she had trick rode. I don't know if she trick rode for Longhorn, but she trick rode up in Ohio area. She'd moved down here close to us, and she had a saddle but no horse. So we just put the saddle on one of my horses, barrel horse or pickup horse, I can't remember at the time, and just standing still, she's went through all of the different tricks with the straps and everything, and showed me how to get in and out of everything. And I was like, that was it. I'm okay. Yeah, that's exactly what I want to do. I want to know how to do this. And so I think I was like 12 at the time. And then Dad, of course, seeing that I was going to do it, I might as well go find somebody that's going to teach me how to, you need to try it. I kind of think he had in his mind, like when you put your kid on a bull thinking, okay, he's going to make or break them type thing.
Yeah.
And send them off and see if they're going to really actually follow through. But I went to Patty's and spent 3 days up there with her. And now looking back, this is not how you would do this. But she didn't have an arena. We had a pretty good sized pasture. And she said she knew that she rode that pasture, so she knew it wasn't like holy or dangerous. She had a mare that this gelding I was going to ride that was a seasoned pickup horse. He actually was, I forget who his pickup, a really good pickup man, but she was using him for flags. And she's like, this pickup horse is dead broke. He's pulled bulls. He's picked up broncs. Like he's going to be okay. And we practiced for a full day and a half, just letting me do stuff at a walk. Her leading me around, getting in and out of the tricks and everything. I think probably 5 or 6 different tricks. I forget what all it was, but now looking back, it wouldn't have been stuff I would have said was a beginner stuff.
Right.
Nothing against her. She
Yeah.
just, I don't know that it should train anybody else, but a big old pickup horse. I bet he was 16 hands. So I felt I felt like a little flea on him. Anyway, so I felt pretty safe. And she would get so the day 2 or 3, I think she decided that, well, we'll see if you can do it at a lope. And I don't remember, I think she ponied me off of him for a while and me doing all this stuff. And I didn't have any problems getting in and out of the saddle, got up tricks. I was pretty athletic. I was always really pretty strong. So I got up, getting out of my saddle and everything with no problems. And she's like, I think this is just going so well. She's like, it's up to you. Do you want to see if you can do it at a run and by yourself? And I was like, sure. And she got at one end of the pasture, and I rode him back to the other end of the pasture, and I ran him along a fence and just sent him to her and would bail off in my tricks on that straightaway.
Holy cow.
And I know I did a 1-foot stand. I know I hit a hippodrome stand. I know I did a fender drag both directions, a front fender, reverse fender. I know I did a Cossack. And I swear to you, I did a tail drag.
You did a tail drag. Okay.
I did a tail drag.
So,
the first weekend I learned to trick ride at a run and did a tail drag.
This is not beginner stuff, Windy.
No.
Okay.
And that tail drag felt better to me than the Cossack drag.
Okay.
And Cossack drag is pretty easy.
Okay. So
and
for our
she's
listeners,
like, I can't believe you did that.
For our listeners, to give a bit of perspective here, describe, if you can, best you can, a Cossack.
Okay, so Cossacks, you put your right foot into a strap, and so the strap's around your ankle area.
On the right side of the saddle, you're facing forward.
Yep, facing forward. Your
Okay.
right foot goes into a strap next to your stirrup, and you spin halfway around the horn. So you throw your left leg over the horse's neck in front of the horn and get kind of side saddle, but up towards the front.
You're standing beside the horse's shoulder?
No, you're sitting on side saddle.
Okay.
So you throw your left leg kind of over their neck, and you're kind of side saddle.
Oh, you're still in the saddle. You're not ahead of the saddle.
Well, your body is along the side of the cantle of the saddle.
Okay.
Or the pommel of the saddle.
Okay.
So you're kind of side saddle, but your left leg is in front of the horn on the horse's neck.
Okay.
And you're doing it all in one motion where you're not really sitting there for very long. You're just there for long enough to get your foot tight into the right strap.
Okay. Go ahead then.
Then when you get your foot tight in that right strap, you throw your leg back towards the left and you drop your head and your hands down along the side of the horse. So you're dragging from your right leg.
So your foot is up by their head, and your head is back by their hindquarters.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're
Okay.
at an angle, most people are down along the side of the horse with their
Oh,
foot towards the arena, I guess,
okay.
towards the inside of the arena.
Okay. Some
That to
danger,
me
right?
scared me. It
Yeah.
is. It can be. Now that's not a hard trick. Yeah, all these tricks are dangerous. I mean, anything could happen. Your horse could fall. Your strap could break. The horse could start bucking.
Yeah.
Anything could happen. And I can tell you a bunch of different things that could happen.
Well, let's get into that.
But
But go ahead now. Tell us about. You talked about the Cossack. Talk
okay, that's the
about
Cossack.
the tail drag.
Yeah, and like I say, Cossack is pretty much a beginner trick, and then I would say a beginner a little bit into it.
Mm-hmm.
Trick
Mm-hmm.
drag. Most people don't even teach it anymore because it's so dangerous. And you put both your feet in straps behind the saddle, and then you just throw yourself off the back,
With
and
your
you drag both
with your
hands
face up,
behind them.
with your face looking at the sky for a bit.
Yes,
Okay. So your back is on the horse's back.
yes.
Okay.
Your butt is actually back behind their tail.
Your butt is back behind their tail. So
Yes.
your hands, you let your arms over your head, and you reach down. You can touch the ground.
I did, yeah, for a long time when I got better. I mean, that first time I did it, of course I didn't. I was on this big, huge horse.
Yeah.
And that's probably what saved me was I don't even know if my straps were right at the time.
Oh, my goodness.
But he was so big, it was like laying on a table. And I felt like I was safer because I had both feet in my straps, so I could hold my weight easier. I thought that was the easier trick.
I see. Okay.
And then as I got older and was telling them people that were trick riders, like, oh my goodness, you should have never done that.
Yeah.
But
oh my
ended up
goodness.
being my signature trick for years.
It was. Now,
Yeah.
bit of perspective here. The hind legs, and you're doing this at a lope, right? At a canter.
Run, yeah.
You had to run. The horse's hind legs, they're not that far away from you, are they?
So it's not their feet, it's not their hooves that would
No.
get you, it's their hocks.
They're hocks. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. And did you ever get bumped by them, the hocks?
Oh, yeah, I've been almost knocked out a couple of times because I got to where I was doing like a stand up and then dive back.
Oh, wait a minute. Whoa. Back up. So you're standing up behind the saddle.
Mm-hmm.
Your feet are in these straps.
Yes.
And how wide are these straps, and how do you know how strong these straps are? I mean, are you able to adjust them and get them super tight before you make the move?
Well, you didn't want them very tight the way I did it. No, you wanted to be able to point your toes and fall out of them if you needed to. So the way my straps were, Angelo Iodice rigged my straps up first time when I actually started trick riding again, like professionally, and I was already hired on and I'd already got a good horse, which we'll get into how that happened. But he showed me how to put my straps in the way Helen Pazant, I think is the way you pronounce her name, Pazant from New York.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's the way she did her tail drag. Yeah. And so that's who taught him all of his tricks. So that's how he taught me how to do my tail drag straps. People do it there's lots of different ways people have done tail drag straps.
Yeah. Well, you had mentioned the various ways one could get into a wreck. And
yes.
I'm imagining, let me make sure I have this right. The horse is on a run. You stand up, your feet, your ankles are attached to you get them into the straps behind your saddle, behind the seat of the saddle, and you simply fall over backwards.
So my straps were alongside of the saddle on each side.
Okay.
About just on top of the back girth. D-ring.
Yep.
In the D-ring.
Yep.
So when I stood up, I had a foot on each side of the seat.
Okay. But still,
so
back at the back of the saddle.
Yeah,
Oh,
but my
my.
straps were loose enough that I could slide back, slip my toes into my straps, use them as stirrups, get back into my saddle up by the horn, get my reins, turn my horse and get him going, and then stand up and then dive back.
Okay. And dive back. So back dive off a diving board, kind of.
Kind of like the Nestea plunge.
Nesty plunge. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what was the response of the crowd?
Gasp.
Gasp.
Yeah.
Did they set it up and say, this is what we're going to see? Or they just let it roll?
Jerry Bellis was great about it. He always would set it up. And I wasn't the first person to do that. I'd seen it done many years before that, and I just thought it was amazing. I know other trick riders had done it. So it was just it just looked better. It sold better. It was harder to do because you had to know exactly how to hit so that you didn't get off to one side or the other. You had to be pretty even when you went back.
And then
back into it.
All core is just a big old sit up to get back into the saddle, get back in position?
Yeah, you would time it. Your horse is throwing you up about every stride. You're actually trying to fight staying down and not bouncing.
Okay.
You're trying to fight not bouncing because the bouncing would get you off to the one side or the other. So you had to relax and just hang to where your body would flow with the horse.
Wow.
And so when you knew it was time to come up, you basically just waited till that next lift of the horse, and then you did one big setup. Now, most of the time, I could come all the way up and use the back of the horse and push my hands down, pop out of my straps, and get back in the saddle.
Mm-hmm. And selling the act, selling that trick, let me say it that way, selling the trick before, middle, and end, you're selling. We talked about that, Lenore Rowe, and selling and how to sell and how to perform. For performance art is really a lot of what you're describing. How did that fit into the tricks, to the performing of the tricks?
I mean, all of the tricks have their own little timing that you can take that opportunity to sell it. You always want to sell it as you're heading into the trick and as you're coming out of the trick. And then as a team, because we always had 3 or 4 of us trick riding. I mean, I had to trick ride by myself, of course, at the smaller rodeos in the summertime, but on the Longhorn run, we always had a team, a troop is what you'd call it. And I felt like we always needed to complement one another as far as the tricks. I always felt like, okay, we need to get it together to where when I'm doing a down trick, say a drag, your next trick should be an up trick, a stand.
I see.
Or a groundwork where it's a vault and then the strap trick, and to alternate it for the crowd. You want to bring them up and down. Mm-hmm. And so I think, Loretta Phillips, now Pemberton, I think we were great at that we would complement one another as far as I knew she could do certain tricks prettier than I could. Mm-hmm. And then I did tricks that she didn't do. And so we always worked it out so easily and when we were in the arena together, it was magical to me because I felt like we just knew exactly what the other one was about to do. And our horses worked similar, and we could talk and have a conversation out there and we were constantly having fun the whole time.
Oh, wow. Okay. So taking you back just a little bit, you're 12 years old, you're doing this in a pasture, you're doing it at the run, you perform the Cossack and the tail drag. Those are, beginner tricks, hardly.
Yeah.
So tell us about the time between your 12, 13 years of age before you hit the big time. And that, of course, is Longhorn Rodeo.
Well, so I never had a trick riding saddle. I was using either Sandy saddle or Patty saddle. It was really hard to find trick riding saddles back then. There wasn't as many saddle makers making the trick riding saddles then. So you had to basically find a used one if somebody wanted to sell it. And so I didn't really have the opportunity to practice much. I mean, I used a barrel saddle, or I used a roping saddle. I tried to do some of the things that I knew were strap tricks. Not safe at all. Practice on the pickup horses, and like I said, I would offer to take some of the white horses home from the Longhorn rodeos if Dad was working, and I brought them home, a couple of them home that I thought would work, and take care of them for the summer and feed them and make sure they were sound and ready to go back to the Longhorn rodeo. But I would practice on them, so I wasn't doing it on my barrel horse. But I didn't have a trick riding saddle, so I can't remember exactly what age I was, but I know I was 16 or 17. It may have been between my junior and senior year in high school. I had a really good barrel horse and pole horse that my mom had got me from out in Oklahoma. We were living in Georgia at the time. And I made it to the National High School Finals on him in the pole bending. And my dad and I drove up to Pueblo, Colorado. And he'd had issues with tendons, and I tried to take really good care of his legs. My very first pole run, we brought a pole down with his tail as we were leaving, but wow. It would have been a record. I don't even know if they would have broke it by now, but I ran a 19.3 or 4 pole run.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it would have won the go around by almost a second.
Really?
Yeah, it would have been crazy. Phil Gardenhauer was announcing the high school finals. And so I was so devastated. And I decided, well, my teammates were like, we're going to enter this side jackpot thing. It's going to be in the practice pen. And at least we can make some money, once you enter that, make a run before your next go-round run. And it had rained, and he blew a tendon completely out on that jackpot run. So I had to borrow a horse to make my second go-round, didn't place, came home just completely defeated. And didn't even have a horse to ride then. I mean, he was crippled. He was, either surgery or he was going to have to be turned out for 2 years. It was bad. So then I just didn't know what to do with myself. And without my dad knowing, of course, like I said, those rodeo news magazines came to our house, and it was like, running out to get the lottery ticket every month. I went out and I read them things from the front cover to the back cover every month. And I was just sitting there one day, and I looked, and there was somebody selling a used trick riding saddle. And my dad had bought me a barrel saddle, a nice barrel saddle. I think maybe it was 4 years old at the time, maybe 5. And I saw that trick riding saddle, but I always had a little bit of money stashed from whatever odds and ends. And I wrote the lady back, you either call or you write, because it wasn't social media. So I can't remember what she wanted for it, like $300 or $400. It wasn't that much, but it wasn't in good shape either. And without anybody knowing, I sold my barrel saddle and bought that trick riding saddle. And when it showed up, of course, I didn't have a barrel horse to ride at the time, so it wasn't like it was obvious. It was a 2-month process of doing this. And my dad was like, "How did you get this?" And I said, "I sold my barrel saddle." And he said, "You did what?"
Yeah.
Like, well, I said, it's in or out, kind of the way I felt about it. I'm either going to do what I want to do. Now is the time to figure it out. Still didn't have a horse, and I'm still in high school, and continued to just bring on those little white horses, or practice on whatever horse we had around there, pickup horses and that sort of thing. But at least I had a trick riding saddle, and it wasn't in good shape. It wasn't anything I could go and perform in. It was really rough. Well, he made sure it was safe, and I just kind of kept picking at it, kept working at it, and the more I did it, the more that thrill-seeking thing, I just loved it. I just loved learning everything I could learn about it. I love training the horse. I love that part of it just as much as I did just a whole different passion and a whole different sense of, this is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
than I ever had at barrel racing. Barrel racing was just one of those things, well, you're supposed to do that kind of thing. It
So,
wasn't that was what I wanted to do.
yeah. So talk about, you trained the horse. So talk about how you train a trick riding horse. What's the process like from start to finish?
Well, I didn't know at that time what I was doing. I mean, I just felt like the more I did something on them, the better they would get used to it. Now, I had good broke horses to begin with because
Yeah.
they were pickup horses, so they had done seen everything. I mean, so I had the biggest part of training one was already under the belt, and I didn't even realize that at the
Hmm.
time. I mean,
Hmm.
I just assumed everything, the horse could do whatever you wanted them to do.
And they were
Um,
okay hanging off the side, off the back. Did you have somebody
yeah,
always kind of there to watch from a
no,
safety standpoint?
no,
No.
I didn't have that kind of sense. I wasn't that smart. I would not do anything like what I did. But I remember practicing one time on this pickup horse that had always been super good about everything I did, solid, smooth. And I didn't take into account that he's good with that stuff. He's good with me trick riding until they go and pick up a rodeo on him.
Hmm. Hmm.
I never took into account that he's probably sore from getting banged around on the broncs and pulling
Sure,
bulls
sure.
and that kind of
Yeah.
thing. I
Yeah.
never thought about that.
Oh, yeah.
I just would go back out. Oh, it's my time to practice. I got him back.
Wow.
So, Dad had a arena, but we always had an arena where he bucked bulls and had bull riding schools and stuff like that. I remember one time, and we live way out in the middle of nowhere. Not I say that we're 10 miles
Hmm.
from the interstate, but we lived where there wasn't any neighbors around, and very seldom did people just drop by. But I was out there by myself practicing, and I think about 5 minutes before this guy showed up, a friend of ours, come in looking for Dad. But right before that, I decided I was going to practice my hippodrome, and which is you put your feet in the straps on the top of the saddle and you stand up and kind of lean forward into them. Well, the back girt has to be in the right spot, or you're going to be flanking them.
Oh, wow. Yeah, right. If it gets too far back, absolutely.
Yeah. So
Oh,
I'm going around and I'm just trotting him, and I've got the reins. I'm just playing, just
yeah,
trying to get figured out how to get my body in the right spot.
yeah,
And then I decide I'm going to let him run.
yeah.
And we come around the corner and he breaks in two.
Oh, my.
And one foot comes out of the strap, and I'm dragging kind of along the
Oh,
outside I'm dragging between him and the fence.
oh, my.
And it's a pipe fence. So I'm like banging the fence.
Oh,
And about that time, we just come to an abrupt stop.
yeah.
And Dad's friend drove up and seen this happening and ran and reached through the fence and grabbed that horse and
And
stopped
stop
him
the horse. Oh, my goodness.
and
Oh,
saved
wow.
me.
Oh, wow. So no injuries at that moment?
No injuries. No injuries, and I didn't think anything of it at the time. I'm
Really?
like,
Really?
thanks. I'm glad you showed up
Oh, my
because I
goodness.
wasn't. I'm like, thank you. I continued to practice on that horse for another year or so, and that I think I get into the how I was going. Dad had this was in the late '80s. Bruce had called Dad and said, I need you to come back and help me with these rodeos. And like I said, from the time Dad was like 17 years old, he had gone to work for Bruce every winter and rode bulls. But he would work for Bobby Rowe, and he'd work for Bruce in the back pen, setting up arenas, driving the trucks and all that.
Hmm.
And so then this in the late 80s, Dad had started going back to Bruce's rodeos. I think he was judging at the time, but he was also going and helping them with the production, the arena directing type part of it. I think he was doing some of that. It was in the early works of him coming and taking over the livestock, because he had summer rodeos that Dad had, open rodeos and high school rodeos. He had a bunch of rodeos in the summer back here in Oklahoma all through my high school years. So I got to where I wasn't doing anything myself at the time, and I still wanted to go. So I would take off on a Friday from school, and I had a little half-ton pickup, and I'd drive to wherever Dad was at. And if one of the judges needed a ride, they'd split the costs, and we would just drive up, and I'd hang out for the weekend, and got to know Nancy and Bill, and met Keith and Melanie Isley. That was when I first met them. I was still in high school, and Melanie was trick riding. Nancy was doing I think she had a trick horse. Bill was still barrel man. Keith was barrel man. Keith was trick riding. So as those weekends, I would just come and hang out and got to know all of them. And every chance I'd get, I would ask if I could get a trick riding lesson from Nancy.
From Nancy?
From Nancy, yeah.
Wow.
And she would borrow Melanie's horse, or Melanie would help, and they would show me a few things that I needed to work on.
Mm-hmm.
So as I'd go to those rodeos and I was setting pivots, I was riding the white horses, and they would, if we had any kind of opportunity, they would give me a lesson. And then I'd go back home and work on it on the pickup horse.
Wow.
So I can't remember if it was the fall run. The Longhorn Rodeos had a fall run, and I had already graduated high school by then, because went to school in college for 6 months or so, and then was working. But I went on that fall run for one weekend and just showed them some things I'd worked on, and hadn't got to practice in a long time up until then because of college and all that. And I'd sold that pole bending horse. I had gotten him sound again.
Oh, you did? Okay.
And I had sold that horse to a little girl here in Oklahoma. Her name was Karen Standifer. She went on to win the national all-around title on that horse as a pole bending horse.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, sold the horse, but I had that money in savings.
Mm-hmm.
And went to the Longhorn Rodeos. I want to say it was Chattanooga or Nashville. It was one of the fall rodeos. And we were practicing, and Melanie was so gracious to let me borrow her horse, and Nancy and her were helping me.
Melanie Isley.
Melanie Isley, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we get to the one rodeo, and for some reason I'm spending the whole week laid over, and was there for like a whole week. And I got that pickup horse, because we had the pickup horse on the road. Dad had the horse on the road with us that I had always trick rode on. And I said, I've been training this horse to trick ride. I think he's doing pretty good. And in the summer, he was. I mean, I thought he was doing great. I didn't really know what scale I was judging him on, but I thought he was doing good. I felt safe on him. I felt like I could do whatever I wanted on him. And again, not thinking, my uncle had been picking up on him for the last 3 weeks, those little rodeos. Hadn't thought about it.
Yeah.
And my saddle had gotten redone at that time. My mom had helped me get the saddle redone. Mm-hmm. I didn't even have a good horse. Like, I had that paint horse, the pickup horse, but he wasn't mine. I had to share him with my uncle. And Mom helped me get the saddle recovered. And I was like, I'm going to have to find me a trick riding horse and do this. I'm going to do it. Anyway, get to this rodeo with Nancy and Melanie, and I think Angelo was there.
Angelo
and Iodice, and I'm gonna show him this pickup horse, how well he's doing. And I go to do a few tricks. He does fine, and then I do the hippodrome, and I come around the curve, and he breaks in two. And he does the same thing. I lose one of my straps, and I go up underneath him. And I'm dragging, he's bucking, he's kicking. He steps on my shoulder and jerks my foot out of strap. And all I could remember is my dad's watching this, and I don't think he ever got off the chute. And Melanie has a meltdown and is crying and says, please don't ever get on that horse again. I've watched him try to buck with you 2 or 3 times. You're going to get killed. And I said, well, he don't do this all the time. I don't know what it is. And she's like, well, he's been picking up. He's probably sore. And I'm like, oh, I never thought about it. And she's like, of course you did. So I was just a kid. I was not a horseman, you know.
Yeah.
She's seen it. And she said, if from now on, you just go get Sonny and you practice on him.
And that was her horse?
Yeah, that was her trick riding horse that she had trained. And so right then, I said, well, I need to do it right now. And so we went and switched the saddles out and put my saddle on Sunny. And she was so mad at my dad for letting me do that, but for letting me get on that pickup horse. And, and he's like, well, she's the one that's wanting to do it. You know, she got to figure it out. And I think he just didn't know. He's not a trick riding person. He didn't know that, well, that's probably a bad idea.
Right.
But so I practiced on Sunny, and it was just like so easy. And my trick riding, I'm sure, looked so much better because he was so solid, and you know, he was just smooth, and he ran hard, and he was perfect. And she's like, from now on, just ride him. So I practiced on him for a good week or so. And the end of that run, she said, look, I'm done. This is my last weekend. I'm not trick riding anymore. I'm going to tell Bruce I'm done. She said, I think you need to go tell him you want to take my place, and you need to audition for him. And I said, oh, I'm nowhere near being ready for that. And she said, you do the same tricks I'm doing right now, and you're doing them on Sunny, and you're doing them fine. So I think you should go audition. And so I go and ask him, and he's like, okay, sure. And I felt like he was humoring me at the time, but
Now
he did give me the time.
This is Bruce Lurkey you're talking about.
Yes.
Had you been around him a bit? Did you have a good...
I had.
Okay.
I had,
okay.
yes. So Dad always was like pushing me to do things as far as business stuff, you know, like, so every year that I could remember, Bruce, up until the late 80s, Bruce was the promoter of the IFR.
Yeah.
So they hired Bruce to come in for the IFR, and he did all of the promotions. He used his people, Jonna and Dana Cravens, who was always worked for him on the Longhorn runs, as the media directors. And it was a major production. Like he catered to the sponsors. Jonna and Dana set up all the media. And they had an office set up. They had a whole staff of girls that would help them with the media stuff. And so as early as 12, 13 years old, I'd go to the IFR for the week with Dad and would get my media credentials and would help John and Dana.
Okay.
As far as I would go and find the cowboys, they would tell them, you know, give me a radio, say, you know, they are wanting to interview whoever won this go around, go find them. Mm-hmm. Bring them back here.
Okay.
So I was a runner.
You were a runner. Okay. So you had a job. Okay.
I had a job. Yeah. And so, and Carissa Stewart and I, she was one of my best friends. She's still one of my best friends. We did this every year. From the time we were like 12 or 13 all the way up until we were in 19, 20 years old. And so one year, Butch Berry was always Bruce's right-hand person at the IFR when he was doing the promotions. Butch Berry was one of his main people to help him. And Butch wasn't able to come to that IFR one year. And Dad said, Butch isn't going to make it out there. I think you need to, you know, Bruce is going to need some help. Instead of you working for Jonna this year, do you want to work for Bruce as his person? And it's kind of the same line as what I did for Jonna, but, you know, it would be making sure that I went and found the sponsor banners and got them hung in the right spots and made sure every day that those were clean and made sure they were hung right and made sure, you know, the sponsors got to where they needed to be, made sure the tickets got to where they needed to be for the sponsors. And it was a lot of that kind of thing that I did for Bruce. And so I worked for him for that 1 year. So I felt pretty comfortable talking to him. And so I did. I was still a little bit intimidated. He was very intimidating, but I felt comfortable enough to go, hey, I know that you're going to have an opening for a trick rider next year. Can I audition for you? And he said, sure, we'll do that. We set the appointment up at Chattanooga or Nashville. It was at Nashville. And I got to perform. It was the very first time I actually did a performance, like with my, you know, selling it like it was a rodeo.
Now,
it was an audition for him.
This was an audition. Was it during the performance?
No,
No.
no.
Okay. Okay.
The only people there, I think, was me and Dad and Bruce, some of the crew.
Oh,
I think Jerry and Jeannie might have watched, and Nancy and Bill and Keith and Melanie and Angelo. And they, a couple of them held my ribbon, and I just auditioned for him, and he hired me. And so I worked out a deal with Melanie to lease Sonny. Keith was going to still continue to go to those rodeos, so she was still going to be around. Keith was still going to be at the rodeos. So I leased Sonny, and I started a month later at Winston-Salem. It was moved that year. It was over, I want to say, New Year's weekend. It was early January in 1992.
really? Okay. Okay.
And my very first rodeo was at Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
In January of 92.
Hmm.
So you leased Sonny. Did Keith continue to haul Sonny for you, or did you take Sonny to the house and work with Sonny at the house?
I did take him home.
Okay.
Keith didn't haul him that winter.
Hmm.
I think he went on the truck with the trailer with us, the pickup horses, I believe,
Hmm.
if I remember right. It's been a while. But I had him. I had him on the run at home with, well, when we left, they brought him to me at the first rodeo. I don't think I took him home between. I think matter of fact, I didn't have him home until the end of that Longhorn run because we started at Winston-Salem. We went to the IFR. Melanie and I entered the showcase at the IFR.
Oh, you did?
And then I had to switch to Quincy, which was Keith's horse. And she rode Sonny because she said, I'm riding my horse though. But we entered the showcase, and I want to say we might have placed like third or fourth that day. Yeah. But I jumped and rode on Quincy. I got one practice in on him, and then trick rode on him for the showcase.
And that was Keith's horse.
That was Keith's horse.
Okay.
Yeah, sorrel bald-faced horse.
So
Yeah.
Sonny became your horse. You were leasing him.
Yeah, and now
How
she
old?
was a lease purchase.
Oh,
so
she.
At the
Sonny
end of,
is a she.
No, he was. He
Okay.
was a Gildan.
Okay.
It was a lease purchase though. So she let me pay him out, and at the end of the run I gave her the balance of what I owed her, but I was kind of like paying him out along the road, along the way.
Earning and paying. Okay. So
Yeah, and so I had to get busy booking rodeos when I got home, and I had no idea what to do there.
did you get
I
any
didn't know where to start.
Did you get any shows off the showcase?
I don't remember because we weren't booked. That was we just entered it for the experience and
Right.
basically to see if we could win some money because we weren't a team. She was done. That was her.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So
But you guys worked together as a team, a troupe, at that showcase.
just at the showcase,
You
Melanie
and Melanie.
I did.
So, Windy, if you would please describe Sonny.
He was 16 at the time, 15 or 16 when I got him from her in 92. He would have been turning a 16-year-old, I think. And he was probably 15 hands, pretty stout built horse, a really smooth runner. Now, it was always a joke that Melanie said that she bought that horse as a stallion. He was a stallion until he was 7. And his name was Satan when she bought him, and she changed it because she didn't want to ride anything like that. And she basically changed him and trained him to be a horse, something she could use. I don't know his full story. I hope you get to interview her to be able to get all of his story, but I know that he was an escape artist. So he was the type that you pretty much had to tie somewhere because if you put him in a stall or a pen, he was liable to jump or crawl out of it. I mean, he did that several times. Very stud acting. Not a kicker, not a biter, but you couldn't turn him out with just anything.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't one that you could even just ride in the arena and carry a flag on or anything. We didn't have a whole lot of warm-up area at those Longhorn shows, but I never had to work. He wasn't something that would just buck or do something silly. He knew his job. He was very toned in on his job as a trick riding horse. Like he knew he did it exactly the same every time. And I just remember he was in the alley. He'd get ready to run into the arena when they call our names, and he would get all excited like a barrel horse. And if they cracked the gate, he was hitting it, and he would knock the gate open to come into the arena.
He was into it.
And
He was
and
going.
if anybody stepped in his way, he ran over them and never hesitated. Like he
Yeah.
would definitely run over somebody. So he was such a blessing. I mean, it just I don't know that I would ever have been where I got to the point where I was at if I hadn't had him that first 3 or 4 years where I could just learn my part and not have to worry about him. I think that was a huge advantage for me. And I'm forever grateful for Melanie for being able to, excuse me, just for giving me the chance.
Yeah.
She made sure I had, she stepped in and said, you've got to take this horse and don't get on that one again. And, some people would have just like, huh, well, she's not going to make it.
Yeah.
I just forever grateful for her.
Okay. And it sounds like she puts you on the perfect horse at the perfect time for where you were in your career.
Yeah. Well, it's always God's time.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like my whole life has been somewhat on a plan. I just had to take the right doors.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So this door opens,
Yep.
New Year's of '92,
Hmm.
Winston-Salem, you kick it wide open. You're in the business now.
Yeah.
So,
And what's crazy, the very first, my mom come up and seen me, and it was like that Hollywood dream or maybe Broadway type thing. She she decorated my door. She brought me flowers. It was like the very first premiere type thing. It was the best weekend. The
and
very first performance, Keith was trick riding and doing the comedy trick riding, but he was trick riding, not the comedy part though. He actually did some tricks, and Angelo was trick riding, and then me. It was kind of unusual to have two men and a girl, but the very first performance, they both wiped out, and it petrified me. I'm like, what happened? Keith fell off or did something, lost it in the shoulder stand. Angelo crashed, and I think he was doing this under the belly. And then here I am, like, oh my gosh, please don't let me fall.
yeah, yeah.
I've got a picture of us all three selling out at the end of that performance, and it's like, wow, I made it through that one. I'm okay. And it was crazy, but yeah, it was like a dream come true.
So you've made the big time at this point. You're a star in Hollywood, if you will.
That's
Longhorn Rodeo.
yeah, in my eyes, yeah.
Yeah, perfect. And did you continue to work with Keith and with Angelo at that point through that run?
Yes, yes, and I was a sponge. I don't think Melanie came on the run every weekend of that run, but Angelo was there. And Angelo, he helped me with all kinds of different stuff that I didn't even know, tricks that I didn't even know about. Melanie had taught me a few things that she had tricks that she did that Nancy didn't necessarily do. And I'll get back to I spent a full weekend with Bill McEnany on only selling with my hands. Oh, I mean, I did not do any trick riding with him. He was teaching me how to position my fingers to sell the trick. So Bill would spend the time of you need to smile and lift your chin here and pull your fingers and turn them like this and his words would be pretend you're carrying a bubble in your fingers
Really?
and
Okay.
you're
Okay.
turning the bubble. So that I was getting it from all different sides of the different performers, Angelo was a great performer. He's still a great performer. And he also had a lot of circus background performing.
Oh, he
So
did.
he had a lot
Okay.
of showmanship. Yes. So he does a lot of Broadway type shows with his trick roping and his bull whips, but he was a great trick rider. He was so generous with practice because he liked to practice and ride his horses, and I would get Sonny and he would show me. And I told him, I was like, I did a tail drag when I very first started learning the trick ride. And he's like, no, you didn't. I said, yeah, I did.
Mm-hmm.
I'm super comfortable with it. And he's like, well, I don't know if Sonny is.
Mm-hmm.
We need to check.
Yeah.
So he rigged up my straps for me
Mm-hmm.
the way Helen would have done it. And so he was sitting saddle, and I would just get in and out of the strap, just get in and out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he would just get Sonny used to it. And he did hump up a little bit, but we rode him through it. And as soon as he figured out how to hold me, how to carry me, then he was fine. Sonny was fine with it. And that's a lot of it. I mean, some horses will take it, some won't. Just depends if their back's sore, if their hamstrings are sore, if the hocks are sore. That's a lot of pressure on a weird area. Like a horse that has to learn how to pull a bull or pull, I'm sure team roping horses, but you still don't have that weight on the croup that a tail drag would put, 50 pounds of weight in a area that normally wouldn't carry weight. So once he learned to carry me, and Angelo would tell me, you're fine, stay there. And he helped me. I got to where I could do it. I just had to keep working at it. I think I started actually doing the trick on him in performances a year later.
Okay. So let me ask this. So you're out. You hit the road in January. The Longhorn itself was darn near every week, all the way through what, up into April?
No, not that late. I think we went into early March.
Early March.
There was usually 10. I think we had 10 weeks, maybe 9 or 10 weeks on the road in that spring.
And you're out on the road those 10 weeks? Are you out from home, gone? Okay.
Gone. Yeah.
And so
here's another thing. I'm so lucky. I feel like I was way luckier than most people, like blessed. My dad was already on the road so I just stayed in the motel with the crew. My horse and saddle went on the pickup horse trailer, and so I didn't have to worry about a truck and a trailer and all of that going.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
So now when we came home and we went back to like Milwaukee in the middle of the summer, I took my home truck and trailer up there, but I still got to stay with Dad in the crew rooms. So I mean, I was a little bit blessed where most people aren't on that end of it. But I was also the only girl in the crew too.
Yeah.
So I had to get it really tough in some areas there.
Yeah.
But it was wonderful. I wouldn't trade those days for anything. Then get home in the summer and think, oh my goodness, I need to actually I got to do more rodeos. I've got to actually get after this. So, I mean, in that time, Dad had a lot of good friends that were stock contractors, and David Bailey gave me several rodeos for a couple of years that I got to work for him in the summer. Got to make phone calls and talk to Johnny Williams. He had Tick Hill Rodeo Company. He hired me. Several guys. Dale Hall. Always, if I needed a rodeo, I worked quite a bit that spring and summer.
So you're doing this full time as a career at this point, or are you still in school?
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not in school anymore, because at that time you couldn't go to college and be on the road. Yeah. So I had to make a decision to quit school when I took the Longhorn rodeos, and needed to pay bills. So when I got home, my mom had moved to Oklahoma, so I was living with her, and we were in Oklahoma City, so we were really close to Remington Park. My uncle and cousin both worked at Remington Park at the racetrack, so I started going out to the racetrack and working out there when I didn't have rodeos.
And what were you doing?
Groom, hot walk, pony. I did just about all the jobs out there for a while. Then in the summer, I was on the road. But another major turning point was I get a phone call from Jay Anders Kukowski now. And Jay Anders was in the PRCA, and she worked for James Harper a lot. And hey, I don't even know who gave her my phone number, but they said that they said you're a really good little trick rider and that you're just getting started. And I need a partner. Would you want to come work a rodeo with me and see how we get along? I was like, sure. And like the PRCA, I wouldn't have, of course. So I drive to a rodeo. It wasn't even a rodeo. It was like a corporate rodeo type thing. It's a showdeo type deal that James Harper was putting on the east side of Houston. I drive down there and meet Jay. She was from Louisiana. And we hit it off. And we practiced together. And I mean, we were just like, we just hit it off. We worked really well together. And James said, I'll give you some rodeos if y'all keep working together. And I can't remember. We worked 2 or 3 rodeos for him, but she had a whole bunch of rodeos booked. I mean, all over the place. But I had to get my PRCA card. And so that summer, I got approved. Wasn't the same process as it is now. It was basically getting some letters and sending it in and paying your card fees, and that was it. And I want to say James, Liesl Harris, and maybe David Bailey all wrote a letter for me.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so once I got my card, if she didn't have rodeos, I went and worked for Charlie Battles. He had a PRCA rodeo company at the time, and I went and worked by myself at some of his shows to get my count. I think I had to have a count still. But Jay and I started rodeoing together that year. I went back and finished up the Longhorn run in the fall. She wasn't working for them yet. The next year, Bruce was taking a break from trick riding. He didn't have trick riders the next year.
Oh, wow.
He had Jerry Diaz there, and he didn't have the trick riding. That was one of the only years he didn't have trick riding. And so Jay and I took off, and we stayed gone pretty much all year long. And we went to the Washington State and all into Minnesota, worked for Joe Simon, down into Florida and worked for several of them Florida PRCA guys, and we were just everywhere. IPRA rodeos, we worked everything. Well, it was wonderful, and I just had Sonny, and so, but it was good. I mean, he was still young enough and in good shape. I mean, but I just kept bringing on more tricks because she and I would have to switch out tricks. She did a lot of the same things I did, so I was like, okay, I need to learn how to vault. I needed, she would like help me get new tricks, and I was still working on my tail drag. And then the next year, when Bruce was going to have trick riding again, he called and he's like, are you wanting to come back and trick ride? And we're going to have trick riding again. I was like, yeah. And he's like, do you know any other trick riders? Like, well, I'm trick riding with Jay, and she's available. So he's like, well, I want some more. And he found Loretta. And I can't remember if Carrie came the very first year. No, it wasn't Carrie. It was Penny Walton. And she was from Kansas. And no, she was from Missouri. She auditioned for us, sent in a tape to him, and got hired. So it was us 4 girls. It was Jay, Loretta, Penny, and me.
All right. So this would be 1994, if I'm keeping track of things? 94.
Yeah, it'd be the January of 94 is when we would have started.
Okay, perfect. And of course, when you say Loretta, you're talking about Loretta Phillips at the time, out of upstate New York.
At the time. Yes.
Now Loretta Pemberton.
Yes.
So tell us about the 4 of you going down the road performing. Yeah.
It was crazy. So I was traveling with Jay, so I could split costs with her. So I was in her rig, but I would stay, most of the time I would stay at the motel with my dad. I think I just hauled Sonny and traveled with her, but you're going from one to the next, and Dad always had a layover spot. So basically all the trick riders would go to that same layover spot as where all the stock would be. So it wasn't like we were having to go find some place. Occasionally, when the weather was really bad, we found a different place to go than where the stock was, so that we made sure they'd be inside. Or, most of the time, Dad had us at sale barns,
Mm-hmm.
which would be covered but not enclosed.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, we traveled, but oh my goodness, that winter weather was. I remember all of us getting, it was almost a blizzard condition and ice, and all of us just pulled over at a Walmart and just walking around in a Walmart, big old Walmart, or maybe it was a Myers. I think they had them up north, just to stay warm because everything was froze up.
Oh wow. Yeah. So
And not
when we
it was
think
awful.
of when we think of rodeo and travel, we typically think of that in the milder summer or spring or whatever. But you're out and you're through the north. You're in Ohio. You're in Michigan.
Yeah.
You're all over the
Yeah.
Northeast.
So most of Bruce's rodeos were east of Michigan to the coast, and anywhere they had a coliseum.
Mm.
And he was really good friends with a promoter that helped start up coliseums. So when they would build a brand new coliseum, and I don't know the man's name, but he was a promoter, and he would be the one that would kind of schedule the openings of those new buildings to bring in the different shows to get those buildings up and off the ground. And Bruce typically was one of the shows they would bring in to get those buildings up and going.
Really? Okay.
Uh-huh.
I hadn't heard this before. This is very, very interesting. So he would partner with them. Okay.
I think he was just friends. I don't know how that worked out, but he was just friends with this man. I don't know who it was. I want to say later on, my dad probably knows more, but I want to say he ended up being somebody in Ticketmaster later down the road. But initially he was like a promoter.
Okay.
And John Cravens probably could tell you the name and how it all came about, but he was a promoter, and so he liked to have Bruce be one of the shows that would come in and help open these buildings.
Wow. Okay. Do you remember one of the buildings? Just anything?
Minneapolis was the one that was a new building, the Target Center. We had that show for 3 years, and we were one of the first shows that weren't, I don't know if that had a basketball team in it or if it was just a coliseum rodeo, or like sometimes they're independent coliseums, and not necessarily owned by a franchise of some sort. I think the Target Center was just basically like a convention center, and we had that rodeo for 3 years. They usually were a risk-free rodeo, basically, that they would help him with the front cost so that he wouldn't lose anything. But we went to Minneapolis for 3 years, and it was in the contract for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
We lost so much money because of the weather that was outside the cost of the rodeo. Like, Dad, all of our trucks froze up. It was so cold, so that he had to lease a heated shop from a truck company to keep the trucks going to where he could get the stock back and forth because it was so cold.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you lost money.
Lost animals.
Oh,
yeah, it was just.
Wow. Oh, wow.
We were in a year up there, 1 year when it was so cold that they were warning people not to go outside for any longer than like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It was below zero cold, like 30 below wind
chill. You learned about wind chill, didn't you?
Oh yeah, it was bad. It was where we had to, when we got the horses out of the arena, they're inside this warm arena for the whole 4 days, and then you have to take them out to that and get them back to. We were staying at Joe Simon's place, which was like 30 minutes outside of Minneapolis, and it was a heated barn, but the ice was still freezing inside the heated barn. It was that cold. And I remember our pickup man, William Griffith, and I loading all the pickup horses and my trick riding horse on the back of this trailer. And I think I had a burro horse with me at the time that I was just taking with me to train. My mom's boyfriend at the time had a burro horse, came off the racetrack. So I was just hauling him to get hauled. And I remember having to cover their faces, their eyes with a towel because it was freezing their eyes shut. I was afraid they weren't going to make it. And because we had 30-minute drive in the wind chill. But we got through it. But, at the end of those 3 years, we didn't go back to that rodeo. And I want to say, like Mobile, Alabama, one of those buildings down there, we went down to get started. Little Rock, Bossier City, all of those buildings were newer rodeos for us. Memphis, where the Pyramid in Memphis, at one time that was a convention center, and we went there the very first year it opened. He just had a connection with that building.
I see.
Crew.
That's interesting. This is really interesting, Windy. I had not heard this. Yeah. This is really cool.
Yeah.
So, of all the places all right, let me stay on this track. You're out full time. You're driving in winter conditions. Mm-hmm. You're struggling with cold weather and the stress on the horses and everything. How did you keep it together for the show?
I don't know. You just did. I mean, I don't know. I look back now, and those horses were tough. We had tough horses because the contestants were in the same predicament. At least I had a spot for my horse to go and be tied in the warm for 3 days or 4 days. They were driving in and out to different rodeos or whatever, and those horses were on the road in and out of those cold areas. Those horses were tough. Dad was really good about he would order the feed from 1 week to the next, and we always had a little bit of feed to carry us over to the next week, and we would always mix the feed. He mixed the feed. He ordered feed to have it the same mix every week, everywhere we went.
Okay.
Depending on the mills, the texture would be a little bit different, but it was exactly the same ingredients everywhere. So we weren't switching feeds up everywhere. The hay would be a little different in places, but he tried to get close to the same type of hay everywhere we went. So we tried to keep that as even as possible for the riding horses, the bucking horses, and the bulls. Everything had to stay, because it was a lot of stress. I mean, we were, and back then, I don't know if it was just old school mentality, but we would get to a place, we'd go to the stockyards, everything got laid there for a couple of days. You go to the arena. Most of the time, we wouldn't get to set up the buildings until Thursday. They'd all the dirt in. The arena crew, the guys that was helping, that went with us every week, they'd set the arena up, and then we would either haul the stock in that night or Friday morning. And so it was really hard to find the time to even ride your horse to keep him fit.
Wow.
I mean, most of the time it was you were hauling them in and out. You might get the opportunity to get them exercised at the stockyards, mm-hmm. which is what I tried to do. Mm-hmm. Or when we get to the building, as soon as you get in there, while they were setting the arena up, just exercising them, walking them in the arena as much as possible. Most of those buildings didn't have a place to warm up. You just had an alley, and it was just crammed, packed full of horses tied.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
All the contestant horses, when they got to the arena. Now, during the day, it wasn't like that. So you had plenty of Friday mornings. If there wasn't TV scheduled, you could go out and you could ride your horse while everybody was feeding, and then get back to the room or whatever. And then, I mean, so they didn't get as much exercise as they would now. Like if you were, I guess it would be about the same now if you was going to those rodeos, but a summer rodeo where you would go and you have a whole day to ride and mm-hmm. do things, mm-hmm. which.
Well, I mean, you can be outside. You can go see things in the good weather. So what was the effect on you? What did you notice in yourself during that?
I guess I got tough. I got real tough. I had learned that once you sign up for something, then you got to commit. You got to commit to a whole different level, because I remember Angelo, that first year I was on the road, Angelo and I was practicing new stuff. And I remember being back at the hotel room and having on a pair of shorts, and William, our pickup man, he's like, I think I was going to go to the lobby or something. And he's like, you cannot go outside down to the hotel lobby looking like that. He said, you're going to get us in trouble. You look like you've been beat. I was just bruised from
wow.
all on one. My arms were bruised, my legs were bruised. I looked like I had been beat with a baseball bat.
Really?
And I'm like, well,
Okay.
I just had to. And I got thrown in it. It was really fast. I learned we were going to drive 15 hours. And then, like I said, Dad thought we needed to leave. So we'd tear down. Sunday afternoon perf was at 2. As soon as the rodeo's over with, we would haul the stock back to the stockyards and let them eat and drink and rest. Sometimes we didn't even do that. We would feed them where we were, load them on the trailer, and as the arena was getting loaded, that we sat there and waited until the arena was loaded, and then we headed to the next town, which might have been 300 or 400 miles away, or it could have been 800 miles away. Yeah. It was all night drives, sleep in the trucks, freezing cold, and not much sleep, but we'd get to the next place and you'd have 3 or 4 days at the stockyards or wherever we were laid over to kind of rest, ride, fix costumes or whatever. But you were with a crew of people every single week.
Yeah.
And we all become friends and longtime friends, and try to go out, do something, go out to eat or go to a movie or whatever. Every now and then, none of us really had the money, so a lot of times we were just hanging out, eating pizza in the room, watching movies.
Yeah. I can describe it this way: the glamorous life of a Hollywood star.
Well, yeah. I still felt it whenever it was during the rodeo.
Yeah.
You still felt it. There's nothing like a Longhorn Rodeo. It was nothing like it. You still felt it. You still felt like you were putting on a show.
Yeah.
All of us felt like we were part of a big production, and we were. That building in Winston-Salem probably had 6,000 or 7,000 people in it, that first performance. We get to Auburn Hills, Michigan. It's exactly the same dimensions as Thomas and Mack. It held 16,000 to 17,000 people. And that first year I was there, it was sold out. And they screamed so loud for things like a bull ride or a bronc ride or a trick ride. The crowd was so loud you couldn't even hear Jerry talk.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable. So yeah, that was amazing to me. It was just like, wow, I can't believe I'm here. And yeah, so the longer, of course, Dad's still, it's hauling his stock now, and he's the arena director, and his trucks and trailers, and the year that we had off, and Jay and I trick rode together everywhere, and then she came back on the run with us and was on the run the next year. And then in the summertime, she and I rodeoed together.
Okay.
All over the place.
Okay.
The next year, I want to say it was in the fall. The next year would be 95.
95.
I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to say we started early again. Like, I don't know if it was the same time as the IFR. It was pretty close. But anyway, my husband, he came on the run in the fall at the last few rodeos and had to fill in for Doug Iodice. He had broke his ankle or something had happened to him where he couldn't finish that fall run fighting bulls. And then in 95, he came on the run with us as the bullfighter.
Oh, he did?
And he was driving a truck for my dad, my husband, Stacy Lattin. And he was fighting bulls and driving a truck for Dad. And we started dating on the run. And then so Jay, she started seeing somebody, I think. And so we ended up not rodeoing together after that.
After 95? After 95?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And so Stacy and I were together. He didn't trick ride or anything at the time, but he knew how. His mom and dad had trick ride a long time ago back in New York when they were little, as teenagers.
Really? Okay. Where in New York where are they from?
I think Poughkeepsie.
Poughkeepsie. Okay.
I think. I'd have to
Upstate.
find out
Mm-hmm.
if I,
Mm-hmm.
well, I want to say they weren't that far from New York City, but
Okay.
I'd have to
Okay.
find, yeah, north of New York City somewhere. I'm not real familiar.
Poughkeepsie.
Um,
Okay.
I think that's the name.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, they had moved from Oklahoma. They'd moved to Oklahoma when he was 5 or 6 years old, I
Oh,
think.
okay.
So
Okay. Okay.
anyway,
Wow.
they lived in Jones, Oklahoma, when I met him. Anyway, so we've been together ever since then.
Okay.
And I tried to book us together, like him to fight bulls and me
Mm-hmm.
to trick ride so that we could stay on the road together.
After
And then my
Longhorn.
dad,
Mm-hmm.
well, we were still both working for Longhorn,
Yeah.
but in the summertime,
Yeah.
you know what I
Okay.
mean?
Yep. Yep.
When we get home, and and he did odds and end jobs, I did odds and end jobs, and um, I still worked at the racetrack when I didn't have something to go do, and so yeah, we continued. He fought bulls, and I trick rode for Longhorn for 16 or 17 years total,
Really?
and I
Okay.
think he worked for him for 8 or 9, and as a bullfighter, he came back and drove a truck and just helped Dad for a few more years, and then of course we had our son in '01, and I think he was only a couple of months old his first Longhorn rodeo, and basically got raised like
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
on the road. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. Stacy was driving a semi, and I was driving the long. I had taken over the white horses at the time, and was taking care of the opening for Bruce.
So
And
talk a
so,
little bit, if you would, Wendy, about the wide horses for our listeners, the pivot horses.
so Bruce's signature openings always had 6 to 8 white horses that he would hire girls to set pivots, but he always had, and he supplied the horses patent red leather saddles and then costumes. And every year had a theme for his openings. So it could be the cowboy theme or the Mexican theme or Native American theme or patriotic theme. But each year had a theme and each year had a costume for these girls to wear. And so there'd be 6 to 8 girls. They all ride these white horses, and they did a drill and then set pivots for the opening. And
Okay.
so somebody always was on the road. For the longest time, Buck Ford went on the road, and he took care of all the white horses. And then Joanna Pruitt and Eddie Carraway, they took care of them for a while. And then one of the bullfighters, Danny Coulter, he took care of them for a year. And then I took over taking care of them. And I took care of them, gosh, like, I don't remember how many years I took care of them till the end, till the last year we went was in '08, I think, was the last year. So I had taken care of them for goodness, I guess almost 8 years at that point, because I had took care of them and drove the white horse truck and trailer hauling them for a year or two before I had my son, and he was born in '01. So yeah, about almost 10 years probably
Okay.
that I
So
took care of. I would find the pivot girls. I would make sure the costumes were good. I would saddle them and wash them and kept them all rode and hauled them and took care of them
and did they
for
go
for
back
the
to the
week.
house with you during the summer?
No, they
No.
went back to the ranch in the summer.
In Nashville.
Um, yes. Now, I would try to go out between the fall, because we always had Nashville Rodeo in November. So what I would do is at the end of November, I would haul all the white horses back to Oklahoma when I could, and would keep them that 2 months and get them all legged up again
Oh wow.
and rode down. If if we were bringing in a new white horse as they were getting older, I would get them flag broke and ready to go back to what they were fixing to get thrown into.
Yeah. So you had a big rig then. You were hauling 6, 8 horses.
I actually was using Bruce's trailer. He
Mm-hmm.
had bought the trailer that was a 7-horse trailer,
Okay.
and we had 6 white horses, and then I had my trick riding horse.
Wow.
Or I would put my trick riding horse, and if I was hauling something extra to train on in with the pickup horses, and then have the 6 white horses. I was also hauling in that trailer. I was hauling a lot of the novelties for a long time. So I had the novelties, all of the white horse saddles, the flags, and the white horses, and maybe my trick riding horse and saddle.
So when you say novelties,
Mm-hmm.
what are the novelties?
So Bruce always had gifts, novelty stands, gift stands, whatever you want to call it, where he'd sell his T-shirts and hats and bandanas and all of that. He always had those set up at the Coliseums. And so Heather took care of that for a long time, his daughter, or other people did. Tammy and Jake Doubt, she later came on as a trick rider, and Jake was working for Dad when he first started, and then they both went to work for Bruce directly. Her and him took care of the novelties. He was Bruce's right-hand person as far as, like I said, the promotion parts of it, and so they took care of the novelty stands for him for a while. And over 17 years, there was a lot of comes and goes. And I think Jay and her husband even went on the run. Steve, they worked for Bruce for a while, and even in the off season, and sold the novelties, and she helped with the opening. Before I took over the opening, I was just taking care of the white horses. She would take care of the opening girls and the costumes. And then after her and Steve left, it was just me taking care of all of it. And all those years have melted together. I don't remember as that came and went, but
what do you remember about 2008, that last year you went?
We knew it was coming to an end. It was hard. Dad tried to figure every way to figure out how to keep it going. Bruce had a lot of knowledge that only he had, and Dad just couldn't see any way of keeping it going by the way, with him footing the bill or taking the risk. Mm-hmm. So we knew it was about over. We kind of all were at a point. I was at a point. My husband was at a point. We were ready kind of for it to be at that time. Mm-hmm. I mean, our years were planned around those rodeos. So for 17 years, my life was planned around those rodeos. Mm-hmm. And we both were needing to move on and get like real jobs, real year-round jobs.
Right.
To
career, get you a 401k, Marlon Harris says.
Exactly. Yes. So, yes, we were needing that. Now we had built a house, we had bought land, we had done all that, but no retirement set up at all. And we were wanting to sell our place in Oklahoma City or in Jones and move down here closer to my dad and buy some land and build again. So that was what we were in the process of doing that year. So we both needed to get a whole nother career set. We were moving anyway. It was like time to everything to break off and start new. Him to get a different job, me to get different jobs. And I was still trick riding. I was still Roman riding, still performing when we moved and when the rodeos ended. But it was all a pretty abrupt stop, I felt like.
It was.
Dad still put rodeos on. He still had his Iperi rodeos he was doing in the summer, because he always did. He always still had his own rodeos in the summer that were under Wild Horse Rodeo. So he was still busy at the time, and still had several good rodeos all the way through. I can't remember his last year that he actually was putting on some rodeos, but mid 20-teens, 2014, 15, so 5 or 6 more years after we ended the Longhorn rodeos.
So, next question. What's the best performing advice, rodeo advice that you've ever received? And who gave it to you?
Gosh, that's really hard. So let me tell you a story of Lenore. You never questioned Lenore when she told you what you needed to do. Now, this isn't going to be, I wouldn't say this is the best advice, because Bill McEnany gave me a great advice about how to sell myself out in the arena. Lenore had helped me find that Roman riding team. And she's like, at the time it was okay to do an Indian theme act and not be an Indian
Mm-hmm.
or Native American. You know, it was okay. It was kosher. We didn't hurt anybody's feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And so that paint team was a pretty little paint team. And I was like, okay, I'm going to make it into an Indian costume Roman riding. I think that would be different. She's like, yeah, yeah. Well, I made a costume. I thought it was really pretty. And she said, baby, that's really cute. Let me just fix it a little bit here. And I'm wearing it. And she grabs a pair of scissors and she cuts about 4 inches off the bottom of my skirt. And she's like, now it's perfect. She said, legs, they'll always sell.
I love that. I
know,
love that.
okay.
Yeah, that's perfect.
I went back and sewed on some fringe. I was not comfortable with it being that short. But.
And my final question of the day. What haven't I asked you, Windy?
I don't know. I'm still happily married to the husband that I met on the Longhorn run.
Perfect.
So, yeah, I guess I think I'm thankful for rodeo to brought my mom and dad together, that I was able to come into this world, and then for me to be able to meet my husband, and then the whole life that I've got that I still can't believe most people don't understand. So, yeah, I guess that's probably sums it up.
Well, that's a lot. That is a lot. And I want to thank you for being on the show here with us today, Windy. This has been a treat. This has absolutely been a treat. Yeah. Any final words? You want to say goodbye to our listeners today?
Oh, well, I hope I didn't bore them all. Okay.
Oh, no.
I hope I said something that was interesting. I could probably tell a whole lot more. There's just so many more people involved in this whole world of my life that I've had. It's been many more people that I could name and enjoyed being around. I guess we can get into that into another Longhorn Rodeo podcast. I could tell Longhorn Rodeo stories.
Put it on your calendar, okay? Put it on your calendar. We will record again together one day.
Okay.
Okay.
I enjoyed it. Thank you.
You bet. To our listeners, we hope you enjoyed our episode of BTC with Miss Windy Ratchford Lattin. And you can find her at Windy Ratchford Lattin Rodeo Specialty Acts on Facebook. And until next time, this is
Windy Ratchford Lattin.
And this is Doug Simcox. Thank you for listening.
God bless.